Ladies and gentlemen, let's get something straight. Attachment is not just an emotional experience. It's a biological, psychological, and philosophical phenomenon that runs deep in the fabric of human existence. When you attach to someone, whether it's a partner, a friend, or even an idea of who they could be, you intertwine your identity with theirs. And when that bond fractures, it can feel like a piece of yourself is being ripped away. That's no trivial matter, that's suffering, and suffering, if left unexamined, will lead to resentment, bitterness, and ultimately chaos. But here's the thing, life demands that you move forward. You cannot afford to stay shackled to an illusion, a past that no longer serves you, or a relationship that is poisoning your potential. So how do you do it? How do you emotionally detach without losing yourself in the process? When you experience emotional attachment to someone, especially in a deep relationship, your mind constructs a narrative, a story of who they are, what they mean to you, and what the relationship represents. This story becomes ingrained in your psyche, shaping your expectations and perceptions of reality. When that relationship begins to break down or comes to an end, your mind doesn't just lose the person, it loses the story. And when the story is lost, the natural human tendency is to resist that loss by trying to rewrite it. People do this in different ways. Some try to negotiate with the past, replaying memories over and over, asking themselves if they could have done something differently. They analyze every moment, searching for signs they missed, mistakes they made, or ways they could have altered the outcome. Others refuse to accept that the person they once knew no longer exists in the same form. Perhaps they've changed, grown distant, or revealed sides of themselves that were previously hidden. Despite this, many people hold on to the idealized version of that person, believing that with enough time, effort, or persuasion, they can restore things to the way they once were. This refusal to accept reality is what keeps people trapped. When you live in resistance to what is, you create suffering. The pain of loss is unavoidable. But prolonging it by refusing to face the truth turns that pain into something far worse: self-deception. You become attached not to the person themselves, but to the idea of them, to the role they played in your life, to the expectations you built around them. This is why emotional detachment is so difficult. It's not just about letting go of someone, it's about letting go of the version of reality you constructed with them at the center. True acceptance means seeing things as they are, without illusion or distortion. It means recognizing that if someone was meant to stay in your life, they would be there. And if they are not, then that is the reality you must work with. It means understanding that people change, circumstances shift, and relationships evolve, often in ways we cannot control. This is not a personal failure, nor is it an injustice. It is simply a fundamental truth of existence. Clinging to an outdated version of reality will not bring back what was lost. One of the most painful aspects of emotional attachment is the belief that what you had was unique, irreplaceable, or the best you could ever experience. But this belief is often rooted in fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of being alone, fear of starting over. Fear makes people hold on to things longer than they should. It convinces them that the pain of staying stuck is somehow better than the uncertainty of moving forward. But this is an illusion. The truth is, life does not stop when someone leaves. Your capacity for connection, for meaning, for joy does not end with one person. The sooner you accept this, the sooner you free yourself from the chains of attachment. This does not mean you should suppress your emotions or pretend you don't care. Processing loss is a necessary part of healing. But there is a difference between grieving and refusing to let go. Grieving is a process of acknowledging what was, feeling the pain, and moving forward. Refusing to let go is a form of self-imposed suffering, a way of staying trapped in a past that no longer exists. To truly detach, you must look at your situation objectively. Are you holding on because you genuinely believe this person is the only source of happiness in your life? Or are you holding on because you fear what comes next? Are you resisting reality because it is painful, or because you are unwilling to confront the uncertainty of change? The answers to these questions will reveal whether your attachment is based on love or fear. Emotional detachment is not about becoming numb or indifferent. It is about seeing things clearly, accepting them fully, and making the conscious choice to move forward. It is about recognizing that you cannot force someone to stay, you cannot rewrite the past, and you cannot negotiate with reality. What you can do is reclaim your sense of self, accept what has happened, and choose to invest your energy in the future rather than dwelling on a past that no longer serves you. When you stop negotiating with the past, you reclaim control over your present. When you stop clinging to a lost narrative, you open yourself to new possibilities. And when you fully accept reality, you free yourself from the burden of what was, allowing yourself to step into what can be. The human mind is a complex system designed to recognize and reinforce patterns. Emotional attachment is one of the strongest patterns it can create, and once formed, it is difficult to break. When you emotionally invest in someone, your brain builds neural pathways that associate them with comfort, pleasure, and meaning. These pathways become deeply ingrained, which is why detaching from someone can feel like withdrawing from an addiction. Every thought about them, every memory replayed, every interaction recruited and restrained the strength of 10 years of suffering that feels undeniable. Strengthens the attachment, keeping you locked in an emotional cycle that is difficult to escape. One of the biggest obstacles to emotional detachment is the constant reinforcement of the connection. This happens in many subtle but destructive ways. Checking their social media, revisiting old messages, reminiscing about the good times, or even hoping for closure all serve to keep them present in your mind. Every time you engage in these behaviors, you are feeding the emotional attachment rather than starving it. And that, your brain does not distinguish between past and present in the way you might think when you relive memories. You react to them emotionally as if they are happening now. This is why people feel stuck in the past, because they continue to replay it in their minds, making it feel real again and again. To truly detach, you must cut off the psychological loops that keep the attachment alive. This is not just about physical distance, it is about mental distance. If you continue to check on them, follow their life from afar, or analyze every interaction, you are keeping yourself emotionally tethered. Some people justify this by saying they are just curious or that it is harmless. But in reality, every act of checking, reminiscing, or engaging is an act of reinforcing the attachment. The only way to weaken it is to stop feeding it entirely. People often struggle with this because they fear what it means to completely cut off the connection. There is a sense of finality that comes with truly letting go, and that can be frightening. But the alternative, remaining stuck in a cycle of longing, pain, and unresolved emotions, is far worse. If you do not consciously take control of your thought patterns and behaviors, they will control you. Breaking the loop requires discipline and self-awareness. Every time you catch yourself indulging in thoughts of them, you must make a deliberate effort to redirect your focus elsewhere. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending they do not exist. Rather, it means refusing to dwell in a space that no longer serves your growth. One of the most effective ways to break the psychological loop is to replace it with something new. Your mind needs something to focus on, and if you do not give it a new direction, it will default back to the familiar. This is why immersing yourself in new activities, goals, and interests is so crucial. The more engaged you become in your own life, the less power the attachment will have over you. Instead of feeding the emotional connection to the past, you begin to cultivate a connection to your future. Over time, as you shift your focus, the emotional grip weakens. What once felt like an inescapable bond becomes just another chapter in your story, one that no longer defines you. There will be moments of weakness. The urge to check in, to reach out, to reminisce will be strong at times. But every time you resist that urge, you take back control. Every time you choose to focus on yourself instead of them, you reclaim your power. It is not an instant process, but a gradual one. Detachment is built through repeated choices, through the daily decision to stop feeding the connection and to start prioritizing your own emotional freedom. The truth is, the attachment will only last as long as you allow it to. When you make the conscious decision to stop reinforcing it, to break the loops that keep it alive, and to redirect your energy towards something better, detachment becomes inevitable. What once felt impossible becomes natural, and before you know it, you find yourself moving forward, Not because you forced yourself to forget, but because you finally stopped holding on. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to emotionally detach from someone is that they have unknowingly tied their identity to that person. When a deep emotional connection is formed, the lines between you and them start to blur. Your routines, your choices, your dreams, and even your sense of self can become intertwined with their presence in your life. When that connection is severed, it doesn't just feel like losing a person, it feels like losing yourself. This is why detachment is so difficult. It forces you to confront an uncomfortable question: who am I without them? If you have built your identity around the relationship, detachment feels threatening because it leaves behind an empty space. That space can be unsettling, even painful, and many people try to avoid facing it by clinging to the past. They hold on to the attachment, not because it is good for them, but because it is familiar. But the reality is that identity should never be dependent on another person. You are not just someone's partner, someone's friend, or someone's emotional support system. You are an individual with your own values, goals, and purpose. The key to detaching is to reclaim that individuality and redefine yourself independently of the relationship that once shaped you. One of the first steps in doing this is to recognize where you have allowed the attachment to override your own sense of self. Were there dreams you set aside because they didn't align with the relationship? Were there aspects of your personality that became muted in order to accommodate the other person? Did your sense of self-worth become dependent on their validation? Answering these questions honestly can reveal just how much of yourself you may have lost in the process of attachment. This is not about regret, but about awareness. Once you understand where your identity has been compromised, you can begin the process of rebuilding it. This process requires active effort. It is not enough to simply say, I need to move on. You must replace the emotional void with something meaningful. This is where self-discovery comes in. What are your passions? What excites you? What personal goals have you neglected? Redirecting your focus toward your own personal development is crucial. The more you invest in yourself, the less power the attachment will have over you. Instead of looking to someone else for meaning, you begin to create meaning within yourself. It is also important to reclaim autonomy over your emotions. Emotional dependence is what keeps attachment alive. If your mood, self-esteem, or sense of fulfillment is dictated by another person's presence or absence, then you are not fully in control of your own life. Learning to regulate your emotions independently is a fundamental part of detachment. This means allowing yourself to feel without letting those feelings dictate your actions. Pain is a natural part of the process, but pain does not mean you are broken. It simply means you are human. The difference between those who stay stuck and those who move forward is the ability to experience emotions without being ruled by them. Another powerful tool for detaching is changing your environment and routine. If your daily life is filled with reminders of the person, detachment becomes much harder. This does not mean you have to erase the past, but it does mean you need to create a new present. Surround yourself with different experiences, meet new people, explore different interests. The more you step outside of the identity that was tied to the past, the more you will develop a renewed sense of self. Growth does not happen in stagnation. It happens when you push yourself into unfamiliar but necessary change. The ultimate goal of detachment is not to become numb or indifferent. It is to become whole on your own terms. You should not need someone else to complete you because you are already complete. When you redefine your identity without them, detachment stops being a struggle and starts becoming a transformation. You do not just move on, you evolve. And in that evolution, you realize that the person you once clung to is no longer the center of your world because you have become the center of your own. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to emotionally detach from someone is their deep fear of pain. Losing someone, whether through a breakup, a falling out, or an unmet expectation, creates an emotional wound that feels unbearable. The natural instinct is to avoid that pain, to suppress it, or to distract yourself from it. People do this in different ways. Some jump into a new relationship too quickly, hoping that someone else can fill the void. Others drown themselves in work, entertainment, or social media, anything to keep their minds occupied so they don't have to face the emptiness inside. But avoidance never eliminates pain. It only buries it temporarily. And what is buried does not disappear, it festers. When emotions are suppressed rather than processed, they don't simply fade away. Instead, they manifest in different ways: lingering sadness, unexpected bursts of anger, emotional numbness, or even physical symptoms like fatigue and stress. This is why so many people feel stuck even months or years after a separation. It is not because they are incapable of moving on. It is because they never fully confronted their emotions in the first place. Detachment is not about avoiding pain. It is about facing it fully and completely so that it no longer controls you. Pain is not the enemy. It is a signal. It tells you that something mattered to you, that something in your life has changed, and that you need to adapt. Instead of fearing it, you must learn to sit with it, acknowledge the sadness, the disappointment, the loneliness. Allow yourself to feel them, but do not become consumed by them. That's not the same as much as the thunderstorm or the storm or the lonely. You remember the things you forget. The key is to observe your emotions rather than identify with them. Instead of saying, "I am broken," say, "I am experiencing heartbreak." Instead of saying, "I will never be okay," say, "I am in pain right now, but it will pass." This small shift in perspective is powerful because it reminds you that emotions are temporary states, not permanent conditions. Many people mistakenly believe that feeling pain means they are weak. In reality, avoiding pain is what weakens you. True strength comes from the ability to sit in discomfort, to face what hurts, and to come out on the other side with clarity and resilience. Every difficult emotion you process makes you stronger, not weaker. When you run from pain, you give it power over you. When you face it, you take that power back. This process requires patience. Healing does not happen overnight. There will be moments when you think you are over it, only for an old memory to resurface and bring back the sadness. This does not mean you are failing. It simply means you are human. Emotional wounds heal in layers, and each time you confront your emotions instead of suppressing them, you move one step closer to genuine detachment. One of the most effective ways to process pain is to express it. Come talk about it with someone you trust, write about it, or channel it into something creative. Emotions that are expressed lose their intensity, while emotions that are ignored build up like pressure inside you. The goal is not to dwell on your pain, but to allow it to move through you. It is also important to recognize that pain often distorts perception. In moments of deep sadness, it is easy to romanticize the past, to focus only on the good times and ignore the reasons why things ended. This can create an illusion that keeps you emotionally stuck. Whenever you find yourself idealizing what you lost, remind yourself of the full picture, both the positives and the negatives. Be honest with yourself about why you need to move on. Ultimately, facing pain is not about suffering needlessly. It is about allowing yourself to process the experience so that it does not define you. The paradox of emotional detachment is that the more you try to avoid pain, the more it controls you. But when you allow yourself to feel it, to sit with it, and to learn from it, you take away its power. The goal is not to erase pain, but to outgrow it. And when you do, you will find that detachment is not about becoming numb, it is about becoming free. Letting go of someone is one of the hardest things a person can do, not just because of the emotional pain, but because of the uncertainty that follows. When a significant relationship ends, whether it was romantic, platonic, or deeply personal, it leaves behind a space that once was filled with connection, routine, and meaning. This empty space can feel overwhelming, and for many, it creates a fear that nothing better will take its place. That fear is what keeps people stuck in the past, unable to fully detach. But the only way to truly move on is to create a compelling future, one that makes letting go not just necessary, but worthwhile. The human mind is naturally forward-moving. People thrive when they have goals, purpose, and something to look forward to. Emotional attachment lingers when there is nothing strong enough in the present or future to pull attention away from the past. This is why some people spend years longing for what was, feeling as though they will never experience anything as meaningful again. The truth, however, is that meaning is not something you find. It is something you create. If you want to detach from someone, you must build a life so fulfilling that holding on to the past no longer makes sense. The first step is shifting focus from what was lost to what can be gained. Loss can feel like the end of a chapter, but it is also the beginning of another. Instead of seeing detachment as a painful separation, it can be reframed as an opportunity to grow, to explore, and to redefine personal values and aspirations. This is not about replacing one attachment with another, but about rediscovering the things that bring genuine fulfillment and purpose. What are the passions that were neglected? What are the dreams that were put on hold? What is the kind of life that, when fully embraced, makes the past feel like a stepping stone rather than a dead end? These are the questions that shift the focus from pain to possibility. Creating a future worth moving toward also requires action. Detachment does not happen just by waiting for time to heal all wounds. Time alone changes nothing unless it is used intentionally. New experiences, new challenges, and new environments help rewire the brain, breaking old emotional patterns and forming new ones. The more a person immerses themselves in something exciting and engaging, the less room there is for dwelling on the past. And the more people they talk to about retrograde moments that's exciting and engaging, the less room there is for dwelling on the past. This could mean developing a skill, traveling to new places, meeting new people, or even restructuring daily habits in a way that fosters growth. The key is to introduce something so valuable into life that looking back becomes unnecessary. One of the most powerful realizations in the process of detachment is understanding that fulfillment comes from within. Many people remain emotionally attached to someone because they believe that person was their source of happiness. But happiness is not something that exists outside of oneself. It is created through personal meaning, purpose, and growth. No one person is the key to fulfillment, and no single relationship defines the entirety of life. The moment someone recognizes this truth, they regain their sense of autonomy. They no longer feel like they lost everything because they realize that they still have themselves. And that is more than enough. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It does not mean erasing the past or pretending it never mattered. It means acknowledging that the past has served its purpose and that the future holds even greater potential. The only reason detachment feels painful is because the future has not yet been built strongly enough to outweigh the past. But once a vision for something better is created, letting go stops feeling like a sacrifice and starts feeling like a step towards something greater. The past loses its grip, and the future becomes a reason to move forward with excitement rather than regret. When this happens, detachment is no longer a struggle. It becomes a natural and empowering transformation.